Hello, my name is John, and today I'm going to be reading a book called Remembrance Day. So this is a non-fiction book, so it's not fiction that someone's made up the story. This is facts about things that have happened in history in real life, and it's called Remembrance Day. On the back of the book, I always like to have a little look to see what the book's going to tell me. It says, we will find out why we have 2 minutes silence on the 11th of November. We will learn how Remembrance Day came about. How did it start? Why do we have it? And we'll be able to follow a simple activity to make your own poppy field. If you're interested in the poppy field, we probably won't be doing it today, but this book is in the library. You can come and find out more about the poppy field. So at the end, we can come back and see, did we actually find out what they said we'd find out on the back of the book? But have a look. So, the first section is called A Day to Remember. Every year in November, there's a special day called Remembrance Day. That's what this book's about. It takes place on the 11th of November. This year, I think that is going to be a Tuesday. This is 2025, in case you're watching this in 100 years' time. So we're going to have half term, and then a week in school, and then it comes the week after that. And on Remembrance Day, people lay wreaths at war memorials. And we can see here, the wreath is like a collection of flowers, but they're not normally live flowers. They're normally paper or material poppies. So you might see poppies laid down often by war memorials as we get closer to November the 11th. And on Remembrance Day, people around the world remember those who have died in wars. So that's what it's really about, remembrance. So we're remembering something. What are we remembering? We're remembering all those people who have fought for good causes and they've given their lives in wars. That's what we're remembering, and we're thinking about them. Now, we talk about one of the wars, the First World War that you might have heard of. This was in 1914, so it's over 100 years ago the First World War began. It was a long war. It was a bloody war, so lots of people died and were injured, and it lasted about 4 years. Many countries took part. Our country took part. India, Africa, other European countries from all around the world were involved in the First World War. It talks about a particular battle, the Battle of the Somme. The Somme was a great big muddy field, two sides of soldiers fighting against each other, and really, you know what it's like when it gets muddy? They got stuck in the mud and they didn't really get very far. They were fighting each other, and it says 20,000 soldiers died on the first day of fighting. Wow, that shocks me. The first day they started fighting there, 20,000 soldiers died. And it says they fought on big battlefields, big field, and when they weren't fighting, what did they do? It wasn't a job. You couldn't just go home to your mum and dad. They had to live in muddy trenches. To stay hidden, they dig trenches, long tunnels in the ground basically, and it was muddy and it was cold. And that's where they had to go when they weren't fighting. And it said in those trenches there were rats. Yuck. It wasn't very clean. What happens if you're not clean? You get bugs, you get illnesses. So if you weren't hurt during the fighting, there was a risk you get bitten by a rat or you could get some other illness. So that's the First World War, 1914, just over 100 years ago. Now, the First World War ended on the 11th, at the 11th hour, it's 11 o'clock, on the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. Right, the 11th month. So that's November. So the First World War ended at 11 o'clock in the morning on the 11th of November 1918. So it's been going for 4 years, started in 1914. At the end of the war, the sides that have been fighting made an agreement, okay, we're going to settle down, we're not going to fight anymore. And that agreement, it says here, is called the armistice. Bit of a strange word, but if you come across the armistice, that's the agreement they made at the end of the First World War to stop fighting. That must have been a big relief for everyone. In fact, it was. They've got a picture here. People were on the streets dancing. Big celebration at the end of the war. That makes sense. King George V, who was the king at the time, we've got King Charles now, but at the time it was King George V. He decided that the 11th of November, when the First World War ended, should be called Armistice Day. And on that day, we would think back, we'd remember the people who fought, who were injured, who lost their lives fighting for good causes, for our freedom. We'd think back and remember them. It says here, by the end of the First World War, more than 8 million soldiers had died. 8 million, you think of that, 8 million people lost their lives in the First World War. So it was really bad for people. Settled down. For a while, there was peace. The First World War ended in 1918. Unfortunately, in 1939, the Second World War broke out. We thought we had peace, we thought they'd settled it, but no, the fighting started again. Again, it says here, millions of soldiers died during that fighting. And millions of what they call civilians were killed. So if you're in the army or the navy or you're a soldier, you're in the military. If you're not in that, if you're just living a normal life and you're not part of that, you're called a civilian. And millions of civilians were killed. So they weren't out there fighting, but their houses were bombed, the places they lived were bombed. And so not just the soldiers died, but millions of ordinary people like you and me, if you're not in the army, were also killed. And it says the war, Second World War, was fought on land, people fighting, at sea, boats, submarines firing at each other, and in the air. You might have been on school trips and seen Spitfires and that kind of thing. They were from the First World War, I think. I could be wrong. Have to research that. So there's fighting on land, in sea, and these planes in the sky. Second World War came to an end, thank goodness, in 1945. Armistice Day, when they agreed to not fight anymore, became known as Remembrance Day. So this book is about Remembrance Day, and they came up with this name for it at the end of the Second World War in 1945. It was now a day to remember the dead from both wars. So you're remembering people who gave their lives in the First World War, 1914 to 1918, and those who gave their lives in the Second World War, 1939 to 1945. They've got a picture here I'll show you. It says air raid wardens, police officers, doctors and nurses risked their lives to save others during the war. So there's a picture of them there. So doctors and nurses, they were helping people. It's dangerous. If you're going out on the battlefield, the soldiers have been injured, the soldiers are ill, medical the people out there risking their lives. And it mentions air raid wardens. What air raid wardens then? What happened there was, part of the war was fought in the sky with planes. If you're sitting in your house, you're a civilian, you're not fighting, there's a danger, there's a bomb landing on your house. There would be a warning went out. Like at school, you've got the fire alarm, if there's going to be a fire. If they thought there was a plane coming over and you might get bombed, a big siren went off and you could go to a safe place. And the people who went round making sure everyone was safe when this happened, they were called the air raid wardens. If you get a chance, there's a place called the Battle of Britain Bunker, quite near Uxbridge. That's really good to visit. If you ever get a chance to visit that, and you learn a lot more about what went on in the Second World War. Now, we're talking about Remembrance Day. It says, at 11 a.m. on Remembrance Day, people are quiet for 2 minutes to remember those who have died in wars. So you might do it in school, or if you listen to radio or TV, most people try to stop at 11 o'clock, reflect, think about what has happened, and at 2 minutes past 11, just carry on with your life again. It says, in some countries, there are parades in towns and cities, ceremonies and church services are held throughout the world. So often people remember these things. You'll have Remembrance Day. People will be in some kind of church or whatever your religion is, and there may well be parades, people walking down the street remembering those who have given their lives. It says Remembrance Sunday, and particularly in Britain, there's a 2-minute silence on Remembrance Sunday. This is the nearest Sunday to November the 11th, and I checked this before we started recording. This year, 2025, that is the 9th of November. So we've got half term, we've got a week at school. The following weekend at 11 o'clock on that Sunday, a lot of people will have that 2 minutes silence and think about those who've given their lives. Remembering, it says, both the young and the old who have died. And again, on this day there are ceremonies, war memorials. If you're in scouts or guides or that kind of thing, often they will also have their own ceremonies. And members of the royal family lay wreaths at the cenotaph in London. If you've done a trip to London, there's a monument, a statue almost, although it's not a person, it's like a big sort of narrow tower that they've built to remember those who died in the war. And that place is called the cenotaph. And you'll probably see on the news that royal family, so probably King Charles and other members of the, could be Prince William maybe, others will go up and they will lay poppies at the cenotaph, again, to remember those who have died. So watch out for that on TV. And in fact, there's a picture in this book of Prince William laying poppies at this place called the Cenotaph in London. This talks now about how people are remembered. All around the world, so this isn't just Britain, we do our own thing, but other countries do it as well. There are memorials to remind us of people who have died in wars and conflicts. So a memorial is you build something. So you look at it and you remember, you see that thing, and you remember why it was there for people who've died. Some memorials are crosses, others are statues. As I say, the cenotaph is kind of like a thin, long tower. But there are also sundials, didn't know that, benches and plaques listing the people who have died. And it shows you here, I'll show you the picture. In America, capital Washington, DC, one of their wars was called the Vietnam War. Not First World War, Second World War, but another war that was mainly involving Americans and Vietnamese. We weren't involved in that one quite so much. They've got a great big long list. I don't know if you can see it, but have a look in the library at the book. They've got a great big long building here, and all the names of the people who died in that war have been put on that wall. And it seems to go on forever. So that's amazing. So if you go to America, you might be able to see that. Or if you can't get to America, come to the library and have a look in the book. Now, this is about remembering people around the world. It says, on Remembrance Day, people in many countries remember those who have fought and died in recent wars and wars from long ago. It's kind of started with the Second World War or First World War, but now, as I say, it really covers all wars and those who have given their lives for their countries in those wars. So we've got the Vietnam War in America as well. It says here, they're remembering those who fought in Afghanistan as well. There was a war in Afghanistan in 2007. So you probably weren't born then, but it's not just First and Second World War, more recent wars as well. It says in America, war dead are also remembered on Memorial Day in May. In Australia and New Zealand, people remember their war dead on the 25th of April, as well as the 11th of November. So 11th of November is Remembrance Day around the world, but other countries as well have their own kind of local days for their own, remembering their own specific wars. And there's a picture here I'll show you of women in Australia who are remembering their fathers who died in the Second World War. So there's some ladies here in Australia, and it looks like they've got pictures of their fathers. And they're thinking back and remembering them, feeling sad a little bit maybe, but celebrating, feeling proud, and knowing that they did a good thing and remembering them. Poppies. You might have seen poppies around, people wearing them, front of cars, maybe on street lamps, lots of poppies around. It's talking about this now. And it says here, after the First World War, poppies were among the only plants to grow on the battlefields in France. So they'd had these wars, it was muddy, it was horrible, thousands of It's like you think about the field at school, it gets muddy and it gets horrible. It's 1,000 times worse than that. So there's no grass, there's nothing. What started to grow first? I didn't know this. Poppies, this red flower. So maybe that's why poppies are associated with Remembrance Day, because they were the first thing to grow on the land once the fighting had stopped. And it says today many people wear poppies on Remembrance Day. You've probably seen people doing that. The red flowers show that they remember all those who have died in wars. So if you're wearing a poppy or you see someone wearing one, it's kind of like, yeah, they've realised, they've remembered, we're thinking of those who have fought for us, we're feeling positive about them, we're kind of saying thank you, and that's what the poppy tells people that we are doing. And you may want to give a donation when you get your poppy, some money, and it says that those poppies, when they're sold, the money goes to help soldiers. So it may be some have been to battle, some might have hurt their arm, hurt their leg, just need help now, having come back from wars. So it helps soldiers today who have come back from war. So that's where your poppy money goes if you donate towards the poppy appeal. There is then a section that explains how you can create a poppy field. I'm not going to go through it at the moment, but if you're interested in that, come and find this book in the library, and it goes on, particularly if you're artistic and into that kind of thing, about making a poppy field. We now have a First World War poem, and that's pretty much the last thing in this book. So I'm going to read the poem. It says, John McCrae was a surgeon in the Canadian Army in the First World War. So he was a surgeon. If you break your leg, if you need help for injuries, he was out there on the battlefield helping. And to say he's Canadian, First World War, people from all around the world took part. He wrote this poem in 1915. So the First World War is still going on. It started in 1914, while he was serving on the battlefields in France. And this is his poem. It's called In Flanders Fields. Flanders is a place in Belgium where there were big battles. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago, we lived, we felt, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. So I think it's kind of a message that he's almost writing it as though he's one of the soldiers who's died. He hasn't died because he's actually written the poem, but he's writing it imagining that he was one of those soldiers and saying, carry on, fight the battle through the poppies growing in the fields, carry on. Though the soldiers have died, they want you to carry on and fight for good causes. I think that's what that poem's saying to us. So that's the book, finally coming back. What did we learn, and have we learnt what we were supposed to? Find out why we have 2 minutes silence on 11th of November. So, 11th of November, that's the closest Sunday to Remembrance Day. And I think we have that 2 minute silence just so we can think. It's just a calm moment. Remember those who have fought in wars in the past. So much noise, so much going on. Put your phone down, turn the radio off, turn the TV off. It's just 2 minutes to think about those people. I think what that's about. And learn how Remembrance Day came about. How did it start? Well, it seemed to be kind of after the end of the Second World War. They decided to have Remembrance Day or Armistice Day for First or Second World War, and it's grown now to really remember people from all wars all around the world. So, I learnt something there. I hope you did as well. This is the book. It's in the library if you want to come and have a look, if you want to make that poppy field. I hope you enjoyed learning about Remembrance Day. Bye.